Hello and welcome to Math with Beth. All right, still working on that. We are going to do finding the GCF, which is the greatest common factor, which is very helpful when factoring. So how do you find the greatest common factor? So if I was looking at these two numbers, 28 and 70, the first thing I would do is think, what is the largest number I can divide them both by? Problem is, some people aren't good at just doing that in their head. So another way you could do it is by breaking these numbers down as much as we can. So again, we still have to deal a little bit with the numbers, but luckily, if numbers are ever even, we know they automatically can be divided by 2. So you can divide 28 by 2 and see that that would give you 14. So 2 times 14 must be 28. Then keep going. 2 cannot be broken down anymore unless you did 2 times 1, and we don't want to deal with the ones. So that one's done. So I'm just going to bring it down. 14 can be split into 2 and 7. 2, 2, and 7 are all done. They're all prime numbers, which means they cannot be divided by anything except 1. So now I'm going to do the same thing for 70, so then I can see what they have in common. So 7 times 10 is one way I could do it. So anything that ends in a 0, you can always use 10. 7 is done, but 10 we can split into 5 times 2. Be careful because it's easy to accidentally put a 5 and a 5 because you want to split that 10 into a 5 and a 5, but that doesn't work because we need two numbers that multiply to 10. So looking at these sets of numbers now, the only thing that these both had was 2. If they had another 2, I would circle that also and then multiply to get 4. Or if they both had 7, which they do, sorry, then I would multiply the 2 times the 7. So the GCF of these two numbers is 2 times 7, which is 14. Now let's try the next one. So first I'm going to split these up as much as I can. Again, I could divide this by 2 if I don't know anything else. That would be 2 and 16. 2 is done. 16, there's lots of options. It does not matter as long as these two numbers really multiply to 16. So I could do 8 times 2, or I could do 4 times 4. I'm going to go ahead and do 4 times 4. 2 is done. 4 and 4 can be split into 2 times 2. So I end up with a whole bunch of 2's at the bottom. For 64, I could start with 8 times 8. If you know that 8 times 8 is 64. If not, you could have divided by 2 because it's even and started that way. 8 is 4 times 2. And then again, we have a bunch of 2's. So just make sure you don't miss any. So what do these have in common? A 2, another 2, another 2, another 2, and another 2. So basically, everything that was in this number, which means the GCF is 32. Now, if you do know numbers pretty well, you could save yourself some time by just thinking about it. And if you could realize that these both could be divided by 32, then you're done. So this is just if you're not as comfortable with numbers, you can't do a lot of it in your head, here's another way. Okay? Now, what happens if we have numbers and variables? The variables are actually the easier part. So I'm just going to come over here and do the variables first. If I have an x to the third here, which really means that, and I only have an x squared here, which means that, what do they have in common? It's obviously going to be the smaller of the two. So you don't have to sit there and write x's and y's out each time. Just know that the greatest common factor for variables will always be the lesser amount. So for the y's, if this is only 1 y and this is 3, it would be 1. So now let me look at the 18 and 36. Some of you might already know the answer, which is great. But just in case you don't, I could break that up and break that up. 36, there's lots of options to start the 36. But I'm going to choose to do that. So now what do these have in common? 1, 2, and 2, 3. So again, it ended up being everything over here, which means 18. So basically, once you see what they have in common, you just multiply them together. I'm just being lazy, and since it's everything here, I know it's going to be 18. So that is my greatest common factor between those two. So one more. And again, I'm going to go ahead and do the x's and y's first. For x's, 3 is the lesser amount, and for the y's, 2 is the lesser amount. 12 and 10 go into this. Remember again, if the 0 is at the end, there's a 10, and the other number is just everything else. So 12 times 10 equals 120. Bringing down these just so I don't forget them and don't have to go and look all the way up the tree. So 3, 2, another 2, and one of the 5. So this time it is not everything for either of these. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply them to see what I get. 3 times 2 times 5 times 2. I can do this in any order. So I'm going to do the 5 times 2 first because that's 10. And then the 3 times 2 is 6. So what is 6 times 10? If I lost you there, you can just do 3 times 2, see what you get, times 5, see what you get, times 2. I was just doing a little bit of a shortcut. So that is finding the greatest common factor. See you next time.